suddenly felt very sleepy. I hadn't slept the previous 2 nights. But Ivan Yakovlevich detained me. Apparently, trying to justify his behaviour, he began to talk. My family has perished. I met Lydia Nikolaevna a long time ago, and we fell in love. If we're lucky enough to survive to the end of this war, we're going to get married. Fate turned out otherwise. In 1943, Gruzdev was sent to the Military Political Academy in Moscow. He graduated as a lieutenant colonel, acquired a new family, his frontline love was forgotten, and moved to Ivanovo to serve. In the 1970s, we met each other again in Moscow when he and his wife came for the Victory Day celebrations. But back in the dugout, as I prepared to leave, Gruzdev suddenly asked, "Do you at least know what Lenin said at the Third Komsomol Congress? What the Komsomol's main tasks are as the party's top assistant? What honours the Komsomol has earned? What the 5 primary features of the patriotic war are, as formulated by Comrade Stalin? Are these things really important for a Komsomol member to know as he heads into battle?" I asked. "It is important, first of all, for you to know. You are now a leader of young men and women. Have I made myself clear?" My new home was a small, cosy dugout in the political unit. Everyone greeted me in a friendly fashion. We exchanged greetings as we were supposed to do. There were 3 of us in the dugout: the regiment's party organiser, the regiment's political agitator, and me. "Make yourself comfortable. Here's your refuge now," they said, gesturing at an empty bunk. I guessed that just 2 weeks ago this had been Tolia Razumov's place. As I approached the bunk to drop my stuff onto it, I noticed a small trunk beneath it. I figured it must have been Tolia's, but I didn't ask about it. Usually, for the position of a regiment's comsorg, a young communist was selected from among the officer political workers. But here they had chosen a combat commander who was not even a party member yet. Power corrupts. I witnessed how some officers, upon receiving a promotion to a higher rank, sharply changed their behaviour, showing arrogance, insolence, even cynicism. Their kindness disappeared, and for the sake of their careers they forgot about their comrades, with whom just the day before they had been eating from the same pot of food or drinking their 100 grams of vodka from the same mug. So I tried to watch myself so as not to break my own inner code of decency. I rubbed shoulders with the men in the ranks and tried to sense their moods, since as a platoon leader and company commander, I had become convinced that the combat spirit of people depended largely on their mood and emotional state. To support a person, to listen to their every word attentively, these I saw as my primary tasks as comsorg. Before one battle, I was talking with a young soldier, and I asked him, "When will you turn in your application for the Komsomol?" In response, I heard, "You want to make a Komsomol member of me, comsorg? You dream of giving me a membership card? I have all of 3 hours left to live before we attack. So, Comrade Lieutenant, you'd better find someone else." The soldier's reply rattled me, and I couldn't regain my composure for a long time. Our regiment commander liked to say, "I would like to kiss every soldier and officer in my command, because they are fighting for our families back home." But why should anyone want to kiss him back? Every day he was sending hundreds, even thousands of men to their doom. I had serious divergences with him here. One day, an Osobist called the political unit and asked to meet with me. You couldn't expect anything good from these people. We had a conversation. "Do you know, Lieutenant, the Komsomol member Abram Rosenfeld?" "I've heard of him." "It seems he deliberately shot himself in the foot. They exposed his crime at the Medsenbat, and he has confessed. There is a report from the company commander. We intended to turn the matter over to a tribunal, but for political reasons we came to a different decision. Commissar Borisov recommended that we speak with you. We want you to have a chat with Rosenfeld. Try and find out whether this scum intends to fight honourably, and then let us know." I decided to get Gruzdev's advice on this matter. He, as always, passed the buck. "Borisov has made a recommendation, so now go do it." I summoned Abram to the political unit. We were alone. First of all, I asked him, "Is it true what your company commander, the doctors, and the Osobists are saying and writing?" He confirmed everything. He swore never to do such a thing again and explained, "My nerves simply gave out." I asked him to tell me about himself, where he was from, and how he wound up at the front. Back in his childhood, he had discovered that he had the gift of art. In 1940, he enrolled in the Architectural Institute in Moscow. During the hard days around Moscow in the autumn of 1941, the Institute's Komsorg had proposed that the entire group of students who had not yet been called into the army should volunteer for the front. Within a few weeks, they were given uniforms and weapons and sent to the distant approaches to Moscow. Almost everyone was killed in the ensuing battle. He and 2 other students wound up in a hospital and then were sent back to the front. I understand that as a Jew, I have a special responsibility. I must fight not only for our motherland and for myself, but also for my people, who Hitler is destroying. You understand correctly, I affirmed, but you walked away from your responsibility. Do you know, Abram, what awaits those men who intentionally wound themselves? I know. Please call me a brash, like everybody calls me. If you permit, I'd like to speak openly. You've summoned me as a Komsomol member, and I trust you. Of course. I'm from Vinitsa. There were a lot of Jews in this city before the war, and all the Jewish families observed the religious traditions and spoke Yiddish. Sholem Aleichem wrote about it in his stories. It's a classic of Yiddish literature, which is highly regarded in our country and around the world. Perhaps you've heard of him? No, Abrash, unfortunately I haven't read him. Read it, you won't regret it. I studied in a Yiddish school and attended the synagogue on Saturdays. In Vinitsa and in Moscow, nobody ever criticized me for this. At the front, especially in the front lines, I can't observe the Jewish traditions. But this company commander who wrote the report nastily insulted me in front of my comrades and even promised to send me in front of a tribunal. Why? I had asked him to release me from sentry duty on a Saturday. I wanted to pray for Mama and Papa. He shouted at me, "Does this mean you don't want to fight on Saturdays? Oh, you! You yourself understand what kind of stuff," he then said to me. He beat me unmercifully. I didn't cry. I only said, "How are you, Soviet officer, any better than the fascists?" He became enraged and promised to deal with me. I became angered and indignant after hearing what Abram had told his commanding officer. I said to him, "The company commander treated you impermissibly and insulted your national feelings. But you're a fine one. To compare an officer of the Red Army with Hitler's executioners, that's blasphemy." At this point, I lost all control of myself. Instead of a discussion, I suddenly lashed out at Abrash, knocked him off his feet, and threw him out of the dugout. For the first time in my life, I had raised my hand against another man. How could I have behaved that way? Was that any way to treat a Komsomol member? It was a loathsome act. What kind of leader of youth could I be after that? For several days, I walked around completely out of sorts. Now and then, I wanted to seek out Abrash at the front, to seek his forgiveness, for the devil knows what he might be thinking about me now. I thought over what I could do, about how I might defend a Komsomol member from his company commander, who was also an anti-Semite and a dull-witted man. But I never offered a defence for him. There was only one thing left for me to do. I secured Abrash's transfer to a different battalion. One day, an ageing soldier with tired, sad eyes approached me, and in a single breath he poured out an entire cascade of short phrases. There was anguish and alarm in his voice, and agonizing tears in his eyes. "I'm a Leningrader, the docent of the Goetzen Pedagogical Institute, the author of many well-known books and articles about Gorky, our stormy petrel of revolution. I'm 44. There's a lot I can do and want to do. I have a wife and 2 kids. They're right now in the blockaded city. They are dying, just like all Leningraders. They're starving to death." I gently responded, "Forgive me. What's your question?" I saw tears welling in his eyes behind his glasses, and he asked, "Please, get me out of the front lines. I'm ready for any duty, even a transport driver." What could I say? But he continued, "Oh God, if I'm killed, who can give a better lecture on Stalin's favourite story? The old woman Isagil than me?" What do you think? Perhaps we should write a letter to Comrade Stalin. He'll understand me better than all of you. Do you really think that Comrade Stalin has no other concerns today while this terrible war is going on?" He gave an ironic smile and said,